Good morning. Happy Tuesday to you. If it's Tuesday, it's a Jason Sukumel day, and we're talking Longhorns. We're talking offensive line. Ugh. And we'll also talk maybe a little bit of Jason's power rankings for this upcoming week. I haven't done mine yet, but I don't think that Texas will be in my top 10. So anyway, Jason, the biggest subject obviously has been the offensive line and what it hasn't happened. Before we get into the weeds, because I want to get into like the recruiting class and get into specifics, overall, how shocked are you by what you've seen from an offensive line production standpoint, not only this season, but including that Florida game?
The season as a whole, not terribly surprised. And they haven't been great, but they haven't been, throw Florida aside, they haven't been awful before last week. Last week was an absolute disaster against Florida. They were overmatched. And frankly, so is the defensive line. I know that's not what we're talking about, but the defensive line was also. But yeah, that was a shocking performance on where I didn't expect. I don't think anybody who watched this team, who follows recruiting rankings, anybody with common sense, when you're replacing four starters, you shouldn't have expected this line to come in and be world beaters, right? And to shove good SEC opponents around. But to just have Florida dominate Texas up front, it was just a turnstile at left guard where guys are running through untouched. That was shocking, incredibly disappointing. You can kind of see where it stems from. And when you look at, and I know we're going to talk about development and recruiting, we'll get into that, but it's just not a lot of top end talent on that offensive line. There's just not a lot of high end talent right now. And it's young. It should only get better, but it's certainly underperforming. And last week was a disaster. There's really no other way to spin it. So, it doesn't get any easier this week, playing a really good Oklahoma defensive line. So not only do they need to get better, they need to get better in a real hurry.
But see, the thing is, okay, so Jason, I would like to push back a little bit on what you just said. When you say we should not have expected this offensive line to be world beaters in the SEC, right? The staff expected this offensive line to be world beaters in the SEC. The staff, Steve Sarkisian, Kyle Flood, all these guys, they put this out there with the expectation that they were going to be okay. So I hear what you're saying. Like, we could say, like, now sit here and like, it's like, well, maybe we should not have expected it, but the staff expected more, though, Jason.
I wonder, I'd love to be sitting in the meeting room. I know they expect them to be tolerable, but they expect them to be decent, right? They wouldn't have rolled them out there. But I wonder if they truly expected them to be dominant, or they just think, hey, man, this offensive line's good enough. It's young, but we'll get them better, but it's good enough. And like a lot of other people thought, hey, we've got Arch Manning behind him. Even if we have some warts on the offensive line, Arch is good enough to cover those warts. We've got talent at receiver, which, that's debatable as well. So I wonder if it was a total misjudgment of the offensive line or a misjudgment of the offense as a whole. And then also, I don't know that – boy, I tell you what, if the staff went into this season thinking that offensive line was going to be world beaters, then that was a huge miscalculation, because I talked to scrimmage sources during fall camp. And I remember one in particular, and one observer watched the offensive line. That's all this person watched. And he was like, that's a bad offensive line. He said, I'm trying to remember, he said they can't run block. He actually said they were better at pass blocking than run blocking. And he said the left guard, and he was talking about NATO at the time, and you can go back and find in my scrimmage notes. Anybody thinks I'm full of shit? No, go find my scrimmage notes. I'll pull them up. He said the left guard, including NATO, was basically a disaster. He said Connor Stroh was a little better than NATO, but left guard was a disaster, and it's all coming to fruition. So if practice observers saw that, the staff had to have seen it. And maybe they thought that they could, I don't know, pull some magic strings and make it work and make it be a sufficient offensive line. But I gotta hope that they didn't think this was going to be a world beater offensive line.
But Jason, though, They didn't think the defensive line would be world beaters, and they went and addressed that in the portal. They
Mhm.
didn't think of any, they had a backup behind Arch Manning that could be a world beater, so they went and got Matthew Caldwell. They wasn't 100%. Now, what's interesting, the year before, they didn't think they had receivers who were world beaters, so they went out and got 3 of those guys, right? And so whenever they have seen something and they've said, we don't have world beaters at it, they've gone out and addressed it. So they had to therefore have thought, hey, we've got the guys, right? And look, we'll get into this in a second, but the thing that people point back to, 2 things that people point to. They're pointing to Pregnon and to a certain degree Fasusi. And those were 2 guys that Texas was in on. And those are two things that you covered, very, very, very tightly, right? And then when Texas had those opportunities, but maybe they felt like the asking price was too much, they passed on it because they thought, well, for what you're asking, we could probably get that kind of productivity from what we have on there, so we're good, right? So they did have the opportunity. They were in on at least 2 big names, right, Jason?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I think there's a couple things with that. I think Pregnon would have been a day 1 starter. They probably mistakenly thought, Fasusi, we're going to pay him all this money. And he's going to sit on the bench for a year or 2. I mean, no, he probably doesn't beat out Gooseby, but he probably beats out Brandon Baker, and maybe you could slide Baker inside to guard. Your initial thought, Omar, I just think like Sark and maybe Kyle Flood overestimated Kyle Flood's ability to develop players. I mean, you mentioned defensive line. They didn't have the bodies there. They went out and got, 4 transfer portal guys, I think it was.
4 or 5.
They've done it at wide receiver. They did it at backup quarterback, you mentioned. Okay, but at offensive line, like it was an obvious need there. You're having to replace 4 starters. Mm-hmm. None of the guys that are going to come in had played very much or played very well when they did play. But I just think maybe there was just an overconfidence in Kyle Flood being like, hey, man, he's a great offensive line coach. He can take these unproven guys and mold them into a decent group, okay? I just think maybe there was overconfidence in Flood being able to work a miracle with guys who, frankly, aren't very good yet and have little to no experience. I mean, that's a bad combination. And I mean, Flood's a fantastic offensive line coach. I know he's getting crapped on the internet and on Orange Bloods. And I don't know Kyle Flood, but if he was sitting here, he'd probably tell you, know what, I deserve it after last week. So Kyle Flood didn't forget how to coach offensive line. I mean, but I just think maybe Sark and Flood overestimated, okay, hey, we can make this line work with the guys we have. They're unproven. Yeah, they haven't been very good so far, but we can make it work when we get some experience. And it was a misstep. It was a big misstep. They should have gone out. I mean, you kind of insinuated they should have gone out and gone after more Pregnons and more portal guys. Even if they're average portal players, this line would be better than it is right now. They didn't have to be world beater, all-American, all-conference type players. Even if they were average portal players, maybe guys from smaller schools, bring them in that played well at smaller schools, they'd probably be better players than what Texas is putting out there right now, and certainly more experienced.
I mean, you can take that Brad Spence money and spend it on someone on the offensive line.
Seriously, you hate to throw someone like Spence under the bus, or maybe a couple of these defensive tackles too. I mean, but that money could have been invested right in other areas, and your returns would have been a lot better.
A lot. So let's get I got some super chats that have come in. So let me knock out a couple of those super chats before we go into what I would show. So Wes Miller said, hey, he said, headed to the Hay City store this weekend for my wife's birthday. Who gets hammered during the game, me or Arch?
Good one, Wes. First off, happy birthday to your wife. Good to hear from you, man. And boy, I don't know. Well, it's your wife's birthday, so I'm assuming she's not driving, so you're not going to get that hammered. So that's probably Arch. So.
Yeah. By the way, Rodolfo had a birthday over the weekend. Rodolfo.
Yes, he did. A shitty birthday, by the way. He sure
did. He did have a horrible one. Oh, I'm sorry, Rodolfo. This one comes in. He goes, it's the perimeter, and it's 'cause I just don't know how to say the name over here. Like, what do you think this is? It's like,
Mac High?
yeah. See, that's where I didn't know. So I don't know. So I don't want to butcher it, but tell me how to say it so I can do it correctly. It's the perimeter run scheme. He or she says, you have to run power slash duo to give offensive linemen a chance against SEC fronts.
You
I
know,
mean,
like,
I feel like when they do run power, though, I feel like there's an offensive lineman who's like 3 yards in the backfield that's getting tossed around as well.
yeah, that's an interesting point and question. And listen, I'm not going to pretend to know run schemes more than Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian. That, like, they should know better than all of us put together what they think would work. And plus, they get to see it at practice. But Flood likes to recruit these big bodies, right? These 330, 350, 370-pound offensive linemen. So they're not always entirely athletic or extremely athletic. So maybe power run, between the tackles is better than kind of perimeter run schemes on some of these guys. But then again, you got a guy like Trevor Gooseby. He's a tackle. I get it. But none of these guards they have, I should say, are going to be pulling, and getting out to the perimeter very easily. So, yeah, I don't know what the answer is. A Mac High or whatever your name is. Sorry if I'm butchering that, but I don't know what the answer is, but I don't see an easy fix, even if they tweak the scheme. I just kind of think, especially I think the pass pro can and will get better. It can't get worse, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is to the run blocking. I just don't.
Now we're gonna assume this guy's not related to Arch, okay? So he says it's Joshy Manning, right? It'd be crazy if that was like some other Manning who just like called, oh my god, like freaking what was it? Jonte's uncle.
Jonte's uncle, yeah.
That, which is, if you haven't seen that over the weekend, my lord. During Flood's tenure, have we ever seen an interior offensive lineman who isn't a jag? You know what,
Well,
Josh?
I mean, DJ Campbell's going to be on an NFL team. Hayden Connors, was he on a practice squad or did he make an actual roster?
I don't know if Hayden or Jake Majors. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, Majors was going to make a roster. He got hurt. I think maybe he's on a practice squad. So, those guys weren't dominant players, but I wouldn't call them jags either. But I get the point, Johnny Manning. I mean, they've had not really good tackle play, especially at left tackle. But yeah, the interior has been lacking, and kind of it's been a revolving door, right? I mean, at the guard, other than DJ Campbell, who obviously solidified at right guard, but that center and left guard spots, even when they had Jake Majors, people are like, oh, people sometimes were critical of Jake and should he be replaced? And then could Cole Hudson do this, or should Cole be at left guard? And I mean, it's been kind of a revolving door at some of those interior O-line positions.
So let's go through this, because now it becomes the question, Jason, is it recruiting or is it development? And it may be the chicken or the egg. It's hard to go, know it. But I'm going to put this on the screen, and let's go through each class individually. Let's start with the 2002 class, okay, of offensive linemen. So you've got DJ Campbell, you got Malik Agbo, you've got Neto, you've got Cam Williams, you've got Banks, Cole Hudson, Connor Robertson, and Lance St. Louis out of that group. Probably the best of the bunch at that point, but then give me your thoughts on what you saw from the 2002 class, whether as you were, covering these guys as recruits, and then what they have developed into.
Yeah, that was almost considered like an all-time great offensive line class by Texas. And I mean, honestly, if we're being honest about it, Texas got pretty fortunate to get Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams. Those guys were going to Oregon before what's his face went down to Miami. Cristobal went down to Miami, and then that opened the door for Texas to land those guys. DJ Campbell was a 5-star. Has he lived up to the hype? No. I mean, he's been a multi-year starter, but probably not what you'd expect a 5-star to be. Kelvin Banks did, of course. Cam Williams probably exceeded expectations. Wasn't great, but that's 3 out of, and Lance St. Louis was a deep snapper, so I know he was technically classified as an offensive lineman, but I don't really count him. Those other guys, I mean, listen, if you take 6 guys, if you hit on 2 or 3 of them, you're doing pretty well. So Texas hit on Banks, they hit on Cam Williams, they hit on Campbell. The other guys, I still think Connor Robertson has a chance. I mean, Cole Hudson has played. He hasn't been great, of course. I mean, Nato and Malik have been disasters. Malik rather is no longer in the program, of course. So, I would give that group a passing grade if I'm being honest. Onward, I think that group held up fine, and that's the reason Texas had a pretty decent offensive line the last couple of years. Now, the problem is sometimes you're a victim of your own success. Okay, when you recruit like that, I got to actually sit here and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, I'm not counting St. Louis. So 7 offensive linemen. Several of them are really highly rated offensive linemen. That makes it tougher that next year and the following 2 years, because guys know, like, hey, if I go to Texas, I'm probably not going to play for 2 or 3 years. So, it's kind of a, like I said, a victim of your own success in some regards. But hey, that's not our problem to figure out. That's a coach's problem, is to figure out how to navigate that situation.
So we give it a passing grade then to 2022. 2023, it doesn't seem like that's much of a passing grade once we get into there with Kirkland, Jaden Chapman, Stroh, Kojo, and Gooseby. You've got Gooseby, who ends up hitting, but probably isn't the guy going into that year that you thought was like, that's going to be the guy that hits versus everybody else. But he ends up being the star of it. Tell me about 2023.
Yeah, what's funny is, and I don't have the rankings in front of me, but Gooseby might have been, and certainly at one point definitely was, the lowest rated of that group. Okay, he was considered kind of a project. He was injured a lot of his junior year. I think he missed a lot of his junior year. I remember going out to Melissa High School for a camp, and it wasn't like one of these big Under Armour camps or anything like that. It was like just kind of a private workout for Gooseby and some other guys. And Texas had not offered Gooseby yet, but you could see it. Like, he had gained a bunch of weight. You could just see it in his frame. You could see it in his athleticism. Now, has he exceeded expectations even for me who went out and watched him? Yeah, absolutely. He's been better than I expected. But, I saw in the chat before we pulled this up, someone said, hey, like, maybe quit taking Flood. Flood loves these large humans, right? But maybe you need to mix in a little bit of more Trevor Gooseby, less Peyton Kirkland, okay? Less 360 pounds, more 280-pound athletic guys who can move. It was Michelle, I think, in our chat, her loyal Michelle, at the offensive line position. I mean, Andre Kojo, mammoth offensive lineman, and we don't know. I mean, he's hurt. He's out for the year. He may have been great. We don't know. Connor Stroh, mammoth offensive lineman. Connor's trying to find his way still. Peyton Kirkland, flamed out. He was huge, just a huge offensive lineman, flamed out. Jaden Chapman, he was one that was a little bit maybe undersized in terms of what, Flood sometimes recruits. So, you can't really put him in that group. But you look at Gooseby, 6'6", 282. Texas hasn't taken a lot of those types that you bring them in, you build them up, you add 30 pounds, 35 pounds, and they keep that athleticism. So I don't know, maybe you got to find a balance there. Sometimes, if you want to be critical of Flood, maybe you could say, okay, maybe he's too focused on these quote unquote big humans, but maybe try to put a little more focus on athleticism as well. But of that group, I mean, Gooseby is really the only hit there. I mean, Kojo, we don't know what's going to happen with Kojo, but my gut tells me it's going to be tough sledding for him to be a plus player at Texas. Connor Stroh, I think he is what he is. Chapman hasn't made a dent, and Kirkland's no longer in the program.
And then the interesting thing, Jason, they take only 3 guys in the 2024 class. And what happened here, Jason, was what did they just, again, was it a we're just too stacked kind of thing? but only 3. And I didn't mention 2025. I mean, those are only two guys I think they took in 2025. Jason, was it Brooks and there was like one other guy they may have taken.
Oh gosh,
2025. I think it was a Jackson Christian, Devin Coleman, something like
that. Oh,
that.
the Coleman. They took 3. The Coleman twins.
Three. Yeah. So, but all right, give me 2024, Jason.
Brandon Baker was a big get. I mean, he was a 5-star player, but to this point, he has not lived up to his expectations. If we're being completely honest, you'd expect a 5-star player to be playing better than he is right now. Daniel Cruz is interesting because I don't remember what he was ranked, probably a 4-star guy, but Texas battled teams like, I think it was A&M, maybe Oklahoma, but Ohio State was heavily involved there. So he was a guy a lot of people wanted as a pure center. He just hasn't been able to, just kind of carve out his role just yet. And Nate Kibble was a guy Texas took over A&M. I see him listed at 6'2", 306. That's probably a current ranking. He wasn't anywhere near 306 whenever Texas took him. So, like I've heard his name a few times on like just practice reports and things like, oh, Nate Kibble's doing good things. But, I mean, again, he's still a young player, so I'm not burying him at Durham. But if he was even worth his salt at all, he would have probably gotten a crack at left guard by now, right? So,
yeah, true.
True. A 3-man class, that's a pretty small group. Like, and I'm trying to look if I went back and looked. To me, it's more about some of the guys that maybe they missed on. I mean, and I know we'll get into that, but like, is it recruiting or is it development? Well, I say this. Kyle Flood hasn't forgotten how to coach. He hasn't forgotten how to develop guys. But when you're missing on guys like Fasusi and Caden Proctor, and I mean, some of these elites of the elite, those are the guys you've got to land. And Texas hasn't landed enough of those guys. So, Nick Brooks was a perfect example. I mean, good player, has a chance to be a good player. He's still young. The Coleman brothers, the twins, actually triplets, if you talk about the defensive lineman brother. But, those guys are good players. But, I mean, Texas has to recruit at a higher level. Now, how do you do that, man? It's tough in today's day and age of NIL. I mean, you're going to have to throw money around, which is going to take money away from other players and other positions or the portal or roster retainment. So it's a bit of a juggling act. I don't know what the solution is moving forward. I mean, some of that has to involve the portal, right? It has to this year.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to get a quick fix, because you can't just suddenly hope that Daniel Cruz takes some super strides forward and alleviates your center problem next year. No, you're going to have to probably go into the portal, but you're going to have to spend money to fix this problem. But, again, I'm not bashing Kyle Flood. I'm not judging Kyle Flood for he's not developing these guys. I mean, Trevor Gooseby, if you're going to say that, you got to give him credit for developing Trevor Gooseby. Okay. Yeah. To me, he just doesn't have enough talent to work with. Now, is that a Kyle Flood problem? Is that an NIL problem? Is that an evaluation problem? Is that being able to not close on those elite recruits? It's probably a combination of all of it. Some of that's on Sark. Some of it's on roster management and who's making the decisions about where they're spending NIL. Some of it probably, obviously, is on Kyle Flood. But you can't ask Kyle Flood to work miracles and take 3-star players and have a 5-star offensive line. And you've got to have.
But most of those guys are highly ranked, though, Jason. Right? I mean, you're talking about guys like your Gooseby. Maybe okay. He gets recruited late, right? And he's a late bloomer. Everybody kind of comes in on him late. But all these other guys that were on this list were guys, Jason, that had rankings, right?
Rankings, but none of them they're not Rivals 100 guys. I mean, Brandon Baker was a Rivals 100 guy. If I'm talking like Rivals 250. I mean, but
Jason, okay, hold on, Jason, hold on.
None of those dudes are Rivals.
This is the offensive line that didn't look good against UTEP, all right? So, so I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, Jason, so I get it to a certain degree, but UTEP was working these guys. Like, it can't be, man, we don't have enough talent to like dominate UTEP. Like, there hasn't been a
I don't know
running
if they
back.
were working them. They didn't work them like Florida worked them, but yeah, they didn't dominate UTEP.
They
I get
did
your point.
dominate. Florida entered this game with
Put
three.
that graphic up back real quick if you can.
Florida had 3 sacks at overall in 4 games before that game. And then all of a sudden, they looked like world beaters. Right,
Okay.
there you go.
Look, if we're looking 2023, 2024, and the guys they signed last year, 2025, the Coleman twins and Nick Brooks, I think if I look at that list, I think only, and I don't have the Rivals 250 in front of me. I don't even know if that thing's still around to search it. I think only Brandon Baker was a national top 250, a Rivals 250 player. I don't think any of those other guys are Rivals 250. That's what 5, 8. That's 11 players on where only one of them is Rivals 250. That's terrible, man. I mean, half of those guys at a place like Texas should be Rivals 250, and probably 3 or 4 should be Rivals 100 guys. That's just, I mean, those are not the types of talent that Texas should be bringing in at offensive line. You cannot count on, I mean, Trevor Gooseby is what he is. He's a unicorn, right? You can't count on that.
Correct.
You can't expect that from 2, 3, 4 of those guys. I mean, you're lucky you got one of them. So I just think they've got to recruit at a higher level. How do they do that? I mean, you got to dig in those pockets, those NIL pockets is what it comes down to. But then again, I mean, does that take away from other positions? I don't know, man. And we're in a new world, a weird world where you got to find that balance. But it's almost criminal when you have Arch Manning. And Arch hasn't been great. I mean, I think Sark said, hey, he was really good last week despite all the things going on around him. But we said it before the season. Dude, you got Arch Manning, and you're not investing in your offensive line. You're going to put him out there behind an inexperienced offensive line. And honestly, it's been worse than we thought even. Yeah. But like in hindsight, how did they not look at that and say, we've got Arch Manning. Dude, we got to have the badass offensive line to get the best version of Arch Manning. And they didn't do it, and now they're paying the price.
I think for me, that's the thing. I think that's the thing that concerns me. And Jaylee, I'll get you in 1 second. That's the thing that concerns me more so than anything else, Jason, is that they whatever you're saying, where you're like wherever you feel like these guys were ranked, but they had these guys in their program, in their system, and we've seen them go after other positions and say we need to beef that up. And when it came to protecting the quarterback and making sure the franchise guy is okay, that's the one that they just kind of like, we'll get by. It's we're good kind of, whether that's arrogance to a certain degree, ego to a certain degree, right, Jason? Whatever it is, or if you just, because it's not one of those two, then it's an oversight. And that's probably a little bit worse, because you could fix a little arrogance, you could fix a little ego, then fix I feel like I can do it. Well, hard is if you're misjudging, talent. That's even worse, right? So all those things kind of lead to that. Jay Lee drops in $5. He says, do we have to give Flood credit for Gooseby? We know the hit rate on anyone below a super blue chip is around 1 out of every 6 point. What is it saying? 1 out of every 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. This Jay Lee watches too much catch. This is
and Jay Lee and I don't like catches numbers make my head hurt, but like the hit rate is 1 out of 6. I think that means a player just getting drafted.
He gets drafted.
I mean, Gooseby's going to be potentially, we'll see. I mean, he could be a first-round draft pick in a couple of years. We'll see. So that's kind of an exceptional hit rate if Trevor Gooseby is what we think he is. I mean, to say a guy gets drafted, yeah, that's a little different than a guy being a first day or second day draft pick. Which
Jay Lee, this is what I would say to you as relates to that. And like, I know Catch puts a lot of time and hours into super blue chips and super blue chips conversations. This is what I will tell you. Wait, I don't equate getting drafted to the success of a college football player, because 98% of them will not get drafted. So if we're only judging success on less than 2% of what will happen to a player, I think you're missing. I think you would be better off in saying how many of those guys, 4-star, 5 stars, 3 stars, are all conference players, because that probably indicates more college success. But the majority of guys are going to just be good players, and that's all you can hope for. Like, getting the draft is such a small portion. Like, I just don't know you can 100% equate that. And you can have all the super blue chips that you want to have in the world, and then still go into the swamp and lose against a team that was about to fire their head coach. So I don't really. If I was you, it's cool. I know he puts a lot of work into it, but I think don't get too much. Don't get caught up in does a guy get drafted or not based off his rankings. Probably more so what kind of college success do they have is probably a little bit better. Jason, let's go real quick before you go. Jason, you don't want vindication.
Sure, I do.
You don't want vindication in this particular way, Jason. But but that being said, people gave you a hard time last week when you had Texas ranked. I believe it was 9th.
I had them 7 last. I had them 9 2 weeks ago, 7 last week.
And there was people on our staff who had Texas ranked number 1,
which is crazy, but yeah.
Let's go to you. You have your power rank. I'm going to do my power rankings tomorrow. You moved Texas down to 11, and you put Florida ahead of. Just give me your thought process on where you had Texas ranked this week in your power rankings.
Well, I don't think Florida's very good. I don't think LSU is very good. But like, how do I not put Florida above Texas? Right? They just beat them head to head. I mean, I know it was an 8-point win, but they beat them pretty soundly. Again, I'll say I don't think there's any great team in the conference this year. I just don't. I thought Alabama was number 1, the best team last week. I had Ole Miss just because they're undefeated. But, dude, I watched that Alabama-Vandy game. Vandy put up a good fight. I dropped Vandy's 3 spots, you see there. But Vandy, it was a 6-point game with 4 minutes left. Alabama kicks a field goal. Vandy then goes for it like with 2 minutes left on their own 20. Bama gets a cheap touchdown off of that, off a 4th down stop. So Oklahoma is interesting. I've got them at number 6, Anwar. If I knew Mateer was healthy and playing, I'd probably have Oklahoma number 4, maybe number 3 or 4. I think that's a pretty good football team when Mateer is healthy. Side note, I got a random email yesterday saying, hey, Mateer is going to play this week, so we're keeping an eye on that situation. Georgia is what Georgia is. A&M, listen, man, they didn't look great against Mississippi State for one half, but then they put it on in the second half. They still have that Notre Dame win in South Bend. Tennessee's played good football. People will say, hey, Texas at 11, that's too low. Well, first off, I've been hearing that for 3 weeks, and I think it's kind of come to fruition. Name one team above them that Texas is playing better than. I mean, I could honestly make a case that Mississippi State could probably or maybe be ranked, even though they didn't look great last week. But, yeah, I mean, there's not a team above Texas that I can say, yeah, Texas is playing better than that group. So I've got Texas at 11. It's pretty sobering. I get it. But, hey, I try to be objective in these rankings. We've had other people on our staff having Texas at number 1 and number 2. And I'm like, have you not watched – this is before Florida. But have you not watched them struggle against UTEP and look pretty bad against San Jose State for much of the game and score 7 points against Ohio State? And people say, well, they only lost 7 points to Ohio State. And I'm like, Ohio State played with handcuffs on their quarterback that first game. If Texas played Ohio State right now, Ohio State would win that game by 20 points because Ohio State's a much different team they were in week 1. Texas, I don't think is. So I've got Texas number 11. Now, listen, I expect Texas to climb those ranks, and it needs to start this week. But I think Texas will finish higher than number 11 because, boy, if they don't, we're in for a lot of long Tuesdays on this show.
and Tuesdays, you and I talking to ourselves because ain't nobody going to be wanting to watch that crap at that time. All right, Jason, get out of here.
Man, I'll
see you
soon.
See you on the podcast. Jason Sukermel, orangebuds.com. That was crazy. Hey, if you join us late, please you go back, get the start of it. hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. Good conversations, good topics. Hopefully they get this thing fixed, but we know it's going to be really, really hard. Go out there, enjoy your Tuesday. Remember I say, live each day like it's your last. One day it will be. So go out and have your great day. Do something nice.